It is just a huge honor for me today to be podcast interviewing Danny Creed, who's a master business coach. And being in dentistry for 30 years and living in Ahwatukee for 30 years, everybody loves their craft, but nobody wants to learn the business of their craft. So it doesn't matter if you're in Ahwatukee and you're a chiropractor, a physician, own a restaurant, or you're a dentist or an orthodontist. They all want, if you own a restaurant, you want to learn how to cook. You don't want to learn how to run the business. And that's why I brought you on the show, and it's a huge honor that you came on the show today.
Thank you very much for having me.
He's a real-world master business coach. Danny Creed is an international master business and executive coach, business consultant, trainer, entrepreneur, best-selling author, and international keynote and workshop speaker. His website is realworldbusinesscoach.com. He is a recognized expert in sales, management, and startup business, strategic planning. He is also a business turnaround and marketing specialist with a strong emphasis on business and personal development and growth strategies. Dan is an elite Brian Tracy International Certified Sales Trainer and a founding member trainer and facilitator of the Brian Tracy Global Corporate Training Courses and the Sales Success Intensive Course. Coach Dan has over 13,000 recommendations and has logged to date over 14,000 business coaching, consulting, and training hours. He has been involved with 14 successful startup businesses with over 400 business turnaround challenges. Coach Dan is the unprecedented 6-time recipient of the Focal Point International Brian Tracy Award of Sales Excellence. His latest book is a must-read. It's on Amazon. It's called A Life Best Lived, a story of life, death, and second chances. And what I love about your book is people are brutal on social media. Every one of your reviews is a 5-star. You don't even have a single 4-star review. Now, you just must come from a very large family to have all of those 15-star. Did you offer them a free Starbucks card at the last Thanksgiving dinner?
That's a good idea, though.
That's a good idea. So let's start. Whether this show's watched by dentists, it's watched by people in Ahwatukee. I've been here 30 years in the same location. And I'm in that Safeway, Walgreens, Chase Bank Plaza, and man, the businesses just come and go and come and go and come and go. And I can only name a couple of restaurants in Ahwatukee that have been here the whole time. There was Bob Benny's, there was CK's. You know how many restaurants have come and gone in 30 years for just CK's and Bob Benny's? And you look at CK's and Bob Benny's, and it's not that they're just the most spectacular restaurant in the world. I've had a lot of other restaurants in Ahwatukee come and go that had amazing food.
Yeah, sure.
But they kept both eyes on the restaurant or the dental office, and they didn't keep one eye on the customer and one eye on the business. Why do you think people have, especially healthcare providers? My God, every MD I know can't answer a single business question about his practice.
Well, we spend a lot of time on this. I have clients all over the world, as well as here in Arizona and Phoenix, and one of the statistics that keeps coming back over and over and over again every year when they check it. In fact, the numbers have gone up, unfortunately, but the number is somewhere between 89 and 91% of all businesses started today will be broke in 2 years or less.
91% of all new businesses will be out of business in 2 years.
Yes, and the main reason of that is just what you just said, is that people start business with absolutely no idea of what it means to be in business. They do something they love, they do something they enjoy, but they don't understand what it takes to, my keyword is entrepreneur. I just got back from a speaking tour in Serbia, and one of the things that Brian Tracy has always said is that it doesn't make any difference where you're at in the world or what the economic conditions are or what business you're in. And it makes no difference at all in that there is a foundational recipe for success that applies across the board to any kind of business, again, wherever you're at in the world. And that foundational recipe is things that every business needs to know. And again, unfortunately, most business people, particularly in professional services, haven't taken the time to sit down and understand what it takes to be in business. They, for instance, dentists or a lot of lawyers, financial planners, all of those professional services, they're really good. But you even take it into like plumbers and things like this. They come from a family of plumbers, or they do something that they're doing something they really enjoy, so it makes sense. Well, I really enjoyed doing this, so I thought I'd start a business. And the fact is they have no idea. They're good what we call technicians, but they're terrible as business people. So it's kind of my mission. You know, people ask me why I got into become a business coach. Well, the main reason, you know, the cliche is to help people. Well, that's inadvertently why I'm here, but the real reason is, as I mentioned, the reason I don't have any hair, I don't know about you, but the reason I don't have any hair is I've done 14 business startups, and I've worked with over 400 turnarounds. And one of the things that again we learn is that golly, you know, people are great technicians at what they do, but they're not very good businessmen. So I wanted to take the experience that I've had as an entrepreneur doing 14 startups and all these turnaround projects, is I wanted to take all the lessons I've learned, all the mistakes I've made, as well as all the things I've learned from some bright people, and I want to help others not make those mistakes. I want to help others learn so that they don't kill their family tree, you know, so they don't lose all their investments. I mean, it's pretty sad if you think about that number. 89 to 91% of all businesses started today will be broke in 2 years. What does that do to people, to families, to groups? What does that do to people's, you know, psyche? Well, it's just terrible what can happen. So I became a coach so I could help share those ideas and thoughts and continue to learn and grow and work with people. So I like to work with business owners who are successful, and they know they're successful, but they know there's another level there that they just can't get to. And in turn, I like to work with people that I can help them achieve their goals faster than they ever could all by themselves. Because so many people get into business and they just expect, well, I'm just going to do it all on my own. I'm just going to figure this out and go. Well, they don't. So hopefully I can find those people and help them not make mistakes, help them grow faster, just by some of the experience that I have and international experience. Again, I was in Serbia speaking at a big IT conference there, and I'm telling you, the issues they had and have are exactly the same issues as we have here in Ahwatukee. Exactly. So when we look at professional services again, doctors kind of figured it out early. That's why most doctors will have a practice manager, but they work the books. And the doctor still doesn't have to be anything but a doctor, and hopefully they have a good practice manager. But for the most part, they're great technicians. They're absolutely great technicians. Dentists are great technicians. But again, I'm not saying anything detrimental or mean, but many of them don't have any idea what it takes to be in business. And that's what I try to help people with. I really try to help them understand the nuances and the elements of that recipe for success that Brian talks about and Zig Ziglar talked about. You know, and because if you work on those foundational elements, if I can get them just to look at them and be more aware of what the foundational elements of success are, then we have a much greater chance of being successful.
You know, but to me, business it's kind of like math. Like most Americans will tell you, oh, I hate math. And then I'll say, well, when's the last time you did a math problem? Oh, I haven't done it since high school. I'm like, okay, so you're 50 years old. You've hated math for 40 years, but you haven't done any single math. And it seems like everything is a mindset. Like when you were in college, and some people would say, oh, man, math is hard. I hate it. And then they don't do any math. And then they're shocked that they got D's and F's in algebra. Then other people would just like I say, this is just bizarre. It's like a chess match. It's like trying to figure out how this all goes together. And then they would put in the hours and the time. So when I talk to dentists and people who own restaurants, and so many of them, like every professional say, well, I hate sales. I'm not going to do sales. I didn't go to school 8 years to sell you need a root canal. I mean, I'm a doctor. If you have a toothache and you want to know what to do, I said you need to recon. I'm not going to sell you. Same thing with restaurants. You're like, my food should talk for itself. And I'm like, food doesn't talk. But they tell you they hate math, they hate business, and then they try to delegate on their unsuspecting wife. And it's like, well, you run the business. Like, okay, when you were dating her, did you decide that you were going to be married and have children because of her business resume? I mean, nothing on her resume said, I want to run your $1 million restaurant. And then you just throw it to her because she doesn't want it, because you don't want it. And she's like, my heart is with these 3 kids. And so how do you change someone's mindset to like math or running their business or selling when they just have already made up their mind? They hate math, they hate business, and they're not going to sell.
Well, the key word there is mindset. And the fact is, you can't always change. Very seldom can you change that mindset. So the key to all of this is number one, changing attitude. The Carnegie Foundation, of Andrew Carnegie's organization, they created a lot of research, and I worked with I do an exercise. It's called the Carnegie Triangle. And what we learned, the very short version of the results of this, is that we will ask people to list all of the traits that go into being successful, that a leader or somebody that's successful has. And I've had as many as 85 in a group setting. I've had as many as 85 traits that we've identified. And then we find that there are 3 categories it all falls into. And the 3 categories are skill, knowledge, and attitude. And so then if we go through and apply a skill, knowledge, or attitude to every one of those traits, inevitably, and this is a real short version.
By the way, I'm taking notes. I'm not texting my mom on Facebook. I'm writing down the Carnegie Triangle.
The short version, the very short version, because this is about a 45-minute exercise when I'm working with groups. And if I ever work with anybody out there watching this, you'll know the answer to this, but it becomes very apparent very quickly, is that if we go put a skill, knowledge, or attitude beside all the traits that we come up with, inevitably, skills and knowledge represent 15%.
Skill and knowledge is 15%.
15%. 85% of what goes into success, leadership, and success is accredited to attitude. How people feel, how people think. Henry Ford is famous for saying, if you think you can or you can't, you're right. And that's where it starts. Now, when you say how do you get people to change, a lot of times you can't. I've worked with a number of dentists and some doctors and again professionals, and the key is, I believe anyway, the key is for them to understand. In fact, thank you for mentioning my current book. I have 2 books coming out. If I can throw a little quick plug in, I have 2 books coming out, and one I'm working on right now is the working title is called Mastering the Grind. And the grind is something that I work with people on, like dentists and such, in that we understand what is it we have to do in order to achieve the kind of success you want. Now, let me back up a moment here, in that I always ask my clients, how do you define success? Because most people's definition of success is much different than mine. My definition of success or wealth is much different than yours. So we define success, and then once we do, we sit down and we look at what do you have to do to achieve it? What do you have to do every day? You know dentists very well. I'm sure there are things, I know there are things that dentists have to do every day, whether they like to or not, in order to reach the level of success that they want, right? Well, so I say, let's sit down and identify those things. What is it you have to do every day? Because I define the grind as doing what you have to do, when you have to do it, whether you want to or not. So if we can define what the grind is for each person, then instead of griping and moaning and groaning and whining about doing some of this stuff or just not even doing it, we set in our mind we might not like to do it, but we know we have to do it in order to achieve what you want. Now, you can call it selling, you can call it whatever you want, but if you define what it is, we find very clearly that if you define it as imperative that you do every day, then you do it and you just don't worry about it. I say shut up. Quit whining. We know we have to do it if you want to have XYZ. If you want to have X level of success, we know we have to do this, and we know we have to do it every day. So to answer your question, part of it is just getting people to understand how they define success and what they have to do to achieve it. Some of that comes back again to the foundational recipe of success, because the elements of the recipes of success requires them to actually think. I've worked with some dentists, a number of dentists, and just the question of knowing who their target customer is. I'm telling you, on a whole, most business people have no idea who their target customer is. They know what the ADA tells them. They know what they think it should be. But I've worked with dentists in particular, a number of them. In fact, one of the first things I ask them is, who's your target audience? And they'll say, well, it's men. And then we'll look at their website, and their website is all men. And we'll look at, all their marketing that they're doing, which is sometimes archaic. And they'll say it'll show men. And I went as far as having some professionals that I work with said, let's go through all your client files. Now that's a pain, right? But let's take our assistants and everybody, when we have time, let's go through files and build a profile. Guess what we found? That their target customer wasn't men, it was 35-year-old women. And yet everything they've been marketing and advertising was men. We found that the 35-year-old woman was the target audience, that she bought all the cosmetic dentistry. And if she was married, she brought in her husband. If she wasn't, she brought in her boyfriend. If she was married, she brought in her husband and her kids. And then later, she brought in her husband, her kids, and her parents. And so by changing just that profile, by really identifying who the target customer is, guess what happened? Business in a couple of cases increased by almost 50% in a year. But you should know. But we come back to what should you know, and that's what I work with in helping professionals like dentists and other professional categories, restaurateurs and such, really understand their business better. Because one of those elements of success in the foundational recipe is clarity. If you come to my office here in Phoenix, you'll see that I have 5 dry erase boards on the wall. And all 5 of them have the word clarity across the top of them. Now, where is for the people who live in Ahwatukee, where is your office in Ahwatukee? I'm at 46th in Chandler Boulevard, right on the west end of the Kohl's Plaza there. There's professional offices there. I've been there for almost 11 years. The west end. What's next to your office? We're in the Kohl's, if the big Kohl's store, we're on the west end of that there. So it's a professional office space. Can I tell you about my Kohl's nightmare? If you want. I don't know if you know this or not, but I'm not a big shopper, but Kohl's, it's a square building, and all 4 entrances kind of look the same. So about 1 out of every 10 times I walk out of there, I think someone stole my car. And then you have to go back into Kohl's and say, okay, maybe I came in that door. And sometimes I've spent 20 minutes trying to find my damn car. So you're you know where the Starbucks is there? Yeah. I'm right behind Starbucks there in that professional plaza. So on Twitter, he's at BizCoachDan. I always say that, it's your people type. You said, Carney, you talk about skill, knowledge, and attitude, and 85% attitude. I always said it was people, time, and money, and it was 80. You said 85% attitude. I always say it's 85% people. They come out of school, and you go look at them, and they have all this turnover, and they'll say, I've gone through 5 receptionists in 2 years, and I'll say, well, HR is everything. I mean, look at the Look at Michael Jordan. He didn't go in the first round draft. Look at the New England Patriots keeping great quarterbacks for several years.
some of these businesses and dental offices and restaurants, I'm like, there's some restaurants now, too, no names mentioned, where every time you go in there, it's all different employees. And so when you see that, you know they're going to be gone in 2 years. So my specifics are, you're a business owner, you love your craft, and you're shy and you're introvert, but now you got to be a leader, and you got to do HR, and you got to hire people. And people always say to me, you know, HR is tough. It's like, well, it's tough for everything. Look at the NBA. I mean, the Arizona Cardinals. I mean, you know, they had a great season, but then you lose your quarterback, you lose your backup. So HR is always an issue. I don't care if your company's 50 years old. I mean, some of these NFL football teams are 50 years old, and then they just lost their starting quarterback and their great running back and their tight end, and they're back to ground zero. What advice would you give for this business owner who just wants to do their craft, and now they got to be a leader and HR and attract and retrain great people, and they would rather just be alone in the kitchen cooking lasagna?
Well, the first piece of advice I always give is learn your business. You don't have to do it, but learn it. Because that's how you find people stealing from you and that kind of thing. You don't know your business. You know, let me ask you, you can answer this, but how many professional services people do you know where the industry taught them how to run a business? You can talk about dentists. Of all the years a dentist will go through college, how many business courses were they required to take?
None. And if I owned a Chick-fil-A, the mothership franchisee would be helping me run my business. But in dentistry, the mothership is a nonprofit organization, the American Dental Association. I mean, when your mothership's a nonprofit, that's your first warning.
Well, again, though, from that standpoint, whether most professional service organizations, the organization doesn't teach them to be a better business person. They teach them to be a better technician. You go through college learning how to be a better technician, how to be a dentist. You go to conferences. They teach you how to be a better technician. Same with real estate, same with financial planning, same with almost anything, any professional service you can be. They're taught how to be better technicians.
You want to know the funny example? You and I are both from Kansas.
Yes.
We
just found that out.
The funniest story I ever came, way back in the day, 1998, I came out, back when it was VHS, I came out with this 30-day dental MBA to help dentists get some training in their HR and people and insurance and overhead. And my two oldest sisters went straight into the Catholic nunnery, straight out of high school. And my oldest sister was talking to a troubled priest, and so just like dentists, I went to 8 years of college to be a dentist, he went to 8 years of college to be a seminary. The day after he graduated, they sent him to Fort Scott, Kansas. He's in charge of a church that has an elementary school that's $1 million in debt, and teachers are quitting, and parents are upset. And he's thrown in this deal, and he's like, we read the Bible for 8 years, and you're HR and teachers and budget deficits. So my sister said, well, my brother teaches this in dentistry, read it safe. So this Catholic priest sends me a letter 20 years ago. It was in 1990. He says, I just want to thank you because I know that this was all aimed for dentistry, but I just took out the root canals, fillings, and crowns and put in teachers and PTA meetings. And he goes, this is the only training I got. And it's like, how could a seminary train you for 8 years and then you're supposed to run a Catholic school?
Well, I say the same. I say the same to professional services, to dentists and lawyers and real estate agents and everyone else. How can an industry? I blame the industry. I don't blame the guy, man or woman doing it. I blame the industry. Why don't you teach the people? You spend 8, then you have another 4 years of working for someone else and building your practice. Why don't they teach you how to do that? There's not a single sales class required. There's not a business course required how to read financials. So that's where I come in. That's where people like me come in that I love to work with these people because most of them I teach them either how to learn it themselves or how to build a team. To answer your question, one of the ways to do that is understand your business well enough that you can build a team. You can build a team that you trust and know that can do the things that you don't know how. I mean, the great businessmen of our time, Bill Gates, always said that, the reason he was so successful is that he hired people around him that were smarter than he was, that knew how to do some of those things. He brought in Steve Ballmer to be the CEO because Mr. Gates didn't want to be a CEO, didn't know how to be a CEO, but he let Steve Ballmer become a billionaire because Ballmer was the guy that ran all over the stage and went crazy and could do that, could pump up investors and do that kind of business. So as an independent business owner that is a professional services provider, you have to learn how to do it. You have to get some semblance of knowledge of how a business runs, HR and selling processes and the science of marketing and things like that, and then so that you don't get taken advantage of. And then you either learn to do it yourself and learn to become a business person as well as a professional, or you are smart enough then now to build a team around you. But you can't just hire a bunch of people because, again, that's where you find people. I just talked to a gentleman the other day who had a bookkeeper steal a couple of $100,000 from him. He didn't even know what was happening. He just knew all of a sudden he wasn't paying bills. He was getting calls from suppliers that's saying, well, we're going to cut you off. And he's, well, what are you talking about, cutting me off? And so we brought in a forensic accountant. I had started working with him. We brought in a forensic accountant and found that all this money was missing.
Now, do you use a forensic accountant out of Phoenix?
There's a couple, yes. That if my client is here. Yes. Well,
if you ever have a lead, I'd love to do a podcast with a forensic accountant because of the dental consultants I know and business consultants that in dentistry for 30 years. Every dental consultant I've talked to said when you go into dental offices, 50% are being embezzled from. They don't even know it. I also want to say something about ego. Like when I was talking to this dentist last night, he was all upset because his front office, he can't keep anyone even a year. Every 6 to 9 months. And I said, well, who's hiring all these people? And he says, you. And I said, well, if I own a football team, if I own the Arizona Cardinals, well, I'm not a scout. I hire scouts. And you go in the NFL, you have scouts that all they do is scout just the quarterbacks. And they know every single person on earth that could potentially play NFL. They know every starter in any college football team. And it's kind of like, well, you know what? If you have a miserable track record, maybe you're just really lousy at HR. Maybe, and I thought I was really good in HR until 20 years ago. I hired this bookkeeper named Lori, and Lori was just so much better in HR. So if you're doing something you're really lousy, you got two choices: either get good at it, fix it, or find someone on your team who's better at it and delegate. And as far as the accounting goes, so many people rely on a CPA, and that CPA doesn't know any of your business. And I went to the same church as Dan and Beverly Carney, the founders of Pizza Hut. And I remember Dan telling me when I was in high school that he said, every millionaire I know, he said by the time they had 5 employees, 2 of them were full-time bookkeepers. And he said, see this construction company over here? They remodeled a house, they built an office deal, they did a remodel, and they know to the penny if they made or lost money on every other account. And you know which construction companies go out of business? They just bid these accounts and they don't know where they're making or losing money. And he always said, know your costs, keep all of that in-house. And he goes, your CPA is some person who carries your relationship between you and the IRS, your federal government paying taxes and everything, but they don't know managerial economics. They don't know your business, know your business. So I hired a bookkeeper in-house pretty much out of the gate, and then I hired another one 10 years later. But I've had a couple of bookkeepers on my team for 2 decades. They know where every penny is, every other thing, and so if you're not good at something, get good or attract someone good on your team. Here's another problem we have specific to dentistry. When I meet people who own their own restaurant or a bar or things like that, a lot of times they're just normal people. They got a personality. They like people. But to get into medical school or dental school or medical school, let's just go medicine and dentistry. You have to get straight A's in calculus, geometry, physics, organic, biochem. These are introvert geeks that sat in the library for 4 years. If they would have been well-rounded and they would have joined a frat and had a girlfriend and went out and joined a bowling league and country line dance, they would have never got in med school. You had to be bulletproof, and the only people that so it's this natural selection of a lot of scientists, engineer, mathematician types. And now they open up a dental office. They have to talk to people. They have to talk to patients. They can't even call the patient a customer. They explain it. Yeah. They explain the procedure. You have an interproximal lesion that will need endodontic therapy because you have a pulpitis, and then we'll do. And whenever they're done talking, the patient is looking at their gynecologist, their dermatologist, their orthodontist. They're all looking at them like, was that even in English? Were you speaking Serbian? I mean, so how can you take that natural selection to honor roll math scientist to actually be a leader and sell to your patients, to sell your vision to your staff? Can that be done?
Yeah, it can. It takes, you mentioned ego earlier, it takes somebody who's open-minded. Successful entrepreneurs, and I consider anybody in business today as an entrepreneur. Successful entrepreneurs are people who I think the major trait are those who are willing to change. Okay, those are willing to change. The folks that you're talking about are very closed-minded, and they will say, well, this is the way I am, so if you can't deal with it, the heck with you. Well, they're going broke. They're going broke. They eventually will have issues. So to answer your question, we know, and one of the things, without getting too deep into it, we teach a technique, first of all, through assessment processes. There's different personality assessments. And we believe that everybody needs to know where they fall in the 4 categories of personality assessments. And the importance of that is so people understand who they are. And then once you understand that, we teach how do you adapt under that personality profile? How do you adapt to others with different profiles? For instance, Howard, have you ever met somebody that when you met them and you left and you went, what a jerk? You have no reason to say that other than, what a jerk. Or you met somebody, you went, gosh, I think we're related. I wanted to hug them. Well, that's the reason. That's because your personality profile attracted or repelled. And we know that for a fact. So certain business categories, like professional services, the guys you were talking about, will usually fall under what we call an analytical personality. They're very bottom line, black and white, ABC, this is the way to do it, this is the way we've always done it. Their approval ratings by friends and family and clients are based on the black and white results. Does your tooth hurt anymore? No. Well, I did a good job because I did this, this, and this. So what we try to do for those who are open-minded, because if you're not open-minded today, you're just not going to make it. If your attitude, I do a seminar called Survive and Thrive in Any Economy, and there's 7 rules in that. And one of the major rules is if you continue to do business the way you've always done business, you will be out of business. It's that simple. So what I try to do with people, as long as they're open-minded and what we'll call coachable. If they're coachable, we'll sit down and do a quick evaluation. It takes 15 minutes, do an evaluation of what their personality profile is. And then we have a process where I will teach them how to identify other different personality profiles and then how to deal with them. I'm not asking them to change who they are. I'm asking them to change who they are in 10-minute increments. So they don't have to say, well, that's not me, so I'm not going to do it. They can say, I can do that for 15 minutes. So a person that's that analytical personality can then, if they're around an expressive personality, they know that they're going to have to smile a little more, that they're going to have to laugh at a bad joke. They know that they're going to have to bring them back and focus them and enjoy life with them for a moment or two. But it'll make you a better parent. It'll make you a better husband. All across the board.
I always tell them to go Hollywood. I mean, when you see Ryan, who's that actor that was in the American Psycho? Christian Bale. Christian Bale isn't a psycho. He played one on a movie. And so you can be shy, but why don't you just go Christian Bale and give a great presentation, give a great staff meeting.
We teach them how to do that though and feel comfortable about it, because sometimes they hear go Hollywood or something and they go, well, that's not me, and a lot of people will feel that way, but. We've been very, very successful in teaching someone how to, the key word here is adapt.
Well, when you talk about personality tests, whenever us dentists take a personality test, it always comes back and says you don't have a personality.
Well, so, they do. I've done enough of them to know. I've done enough of them to know what the personality will usually come back as. Yeah. But then the key is helping you understand how to deal with other people based on who you are.
It's kind of funny because when I went to ASU, you're really told to believe that, man, if you learn calculus and physics and if you learn all these things, it's going to be the secrets to the universe and you'll be a superhero. And then you come out and you learn that it's like, no, it goes all the way back to kindergarten. The people who mastered the sandbox, the people who have the best people skills go the furthest. Well, not the most geometry skills.
One of my favorite quotes is a paraphrase, but one of my mentors used to say, the world is full of educated derelicts. That knowledge is not power. And we're told our whole lives that knowledge is power, correct? Knowledge is not power. It's the application of knowledge that is power. And so that's the missing link usually. People don't apply what they know. Many of them know it. Many of them have been taught to an extent, but they don't apply it. And they don't apply it because it's not easy, it doesn't fit them, whatever excuse it is. Today we've really got an issue of whiners. We've got a whole litany of whiners, people who whine about, I've actually had, this came up last week, I actually have had people hire me or try to hire me knowing that their business was going south on them, and they just needed somebody to blame other than themselves. They were hiring me to have, while I tried coaching, it didn't work. I can smell that out now. You've got to just step back and understand what's going on, first of all, be willing to understand what was going on, and then change it, then adapt and change and apply the knowledge that you have. But it's, people need to take responsibility today, and I think that's a really big issue. If there's certain elements and certain things in today's world, because it's moving so fast with technology and everything like that, we've got to learn how to change. And whether you're a dentist or a doctor or a pipe fitter or whatever, you've got to be willing to change, because the past is probably last week. Things are moving so fast with technology and marketing, and more than anything, how consumers buy. Howard, do you have any? I'm sure you've talked to dentists and as a dentist, but most people have no idea how easy it is to be replaced today. You know how easy it is to be replaced? Most people.
Hey, I opened up my dental office 30 years ago, and Arizona, Utah, and Nevada didn't even have a dental school. Now there's a dental school in Mesa and Glendale. Utah has two. Nevada has one. So in the Valley, they graduate 217 dentists a year. So every year in the Valley, there's 217 more dentists. Year after year after year. 30 years ago, you were booked out a month in advance, and the patient just had to wait. Now there's a dentist on every single corner.
Absolutely, and I tell this story a lot. So again, if I'm ever speaking in front of you, just bear with me when I tell this story. But I was doing a seminar on the science of marketing. When I do this, I don't talk about how to use Twitter and such. I talk about the things that you need to know about your business to make any kind of marketing work. Okay, and most people don't know that. But I had a heckler in my, and there was about 2,000 people in the crowd, and I had a heckler. And believe it or not, And so I said, I got to deal with this. I have to deal with it. He was like going, oh, baloney. That would be replaced. That's not true. I go, look, pardon me, everyone. We're going to talk. I said, sir, what do you do? What's your name? And we'll call him Bob. And he goes, Bob. And I go, what do you do? And he goes, well, I'm in heating and air conditioning. And I says, fine. Let me show you how easy it is. Give you a quick demonstration how easy it is to be replaced. I held up my phone. I held up a microphone. I punched a number, and you hear Google comes up. I go, Google, how many heating and air conditioning companies are there within 20 miles of where we're standing? I hold it up, 1, 2, 3, bing. There was like 82. I said, okay, watch this. Boom. It rings. A guy says, hi, Ralph's Heating and Air Conditioning. I said, sorry, Ralph, wrong number. Threw my phone on the table, says, that's how easy you're replaced. There is no loyalty today. You know, when we were growing up in Kansas, we went to the same drugstore, the same grocery store, the same bank for generations, right? It's not that way today. If people don't like you, and you know, we have companies like Costco and places like that to thank for this, because what happens? You can buy anything there, and if it doesn't work or you don't like it, what happens? You can take it back without question. So today, people have this. I say this, Howard, that there is no reality in today's world. In today's business marketplace, there is no reality. There is only the perception of reality. And what that means is people create a perception because everything's knee-jerk. You see, some people don't buy what they need, they buy what they want. And that includes services.
I think it was funny how everybody was trying to guilt McDonald's into selling all this fast food and everything. So years ago, they came out with all these salads, and they had baskets with apples and bananas. And guess what? Nobody bought them. Nobody goes to McDonald's because they're a health food addict and want to get a salad and a banana and an orange. People get what they want.
That almost killed them. You know, and I too knew Dan and Frank Carney. And Frank,
oh, that's right, because you're from Kansas.
And I was in radio for a lot of years, and Frank told me one time that one of the biggest issues that they ran into was, remember when Pizza Hut used to offer spaghetti and pastas and breads and all that stuff? You remember that? Well, that really hurt them, because when people used to say, let's go get a pizza, they always thought Pizza Hut first. But when they added when they became perceived as an Italian restaurant, people now put them in a whole different category. And that almost killed them. And they got it turned around, but it almost killed them because they tried to become something they weren't. Like McDonald's, you know, offering all this health food stuff. That wasn't what they were known as. You know, the same with Pizza Hut, and the same with any business. You know, understand what your business is. Understand why people come to you, and don't try to be much more than that. If you're offering peripheral services and such, those services have to be complementary, not competitive. You know, if you're offering a competitive service, which is something that competes with your other business, you're always going to have issues. It'll kill you. But if you offer something that makes sense, if you offer something that is complementary to your base business, then you can add additional revenue streams. And we talk about a lot of this in the seminars and workshops that I do with dentists and professional services. There's not hardly any theory in these workshops that I do, because I've worked with so many different people and been a businessman myself, which is one of the issues of a lot of people who call themselves business coaches today. Most of them have never owned a business, but I have that experience. And so when I get in front of a group like that, we talk a lot about real world experiences. That's why you'll see my website is branded Real World Business Coach, because we don't talk a lot of theory. We talk about real world applications, because any conversation I have with you, with them, with the folks out there, I want you to leave with applicable, actionable steps to take. Not being all pumped up and then be depressed tomorrow. I
want to say two things on what you said so far. When you said how easy it to be replaced, I always want to remind people that the Fortune 500 in 1950 by 2015, 88% of all those companies are gone. But they say, well, that was back then. Well, since the year 2000, 52% of the Fortune 500 companies are gone. Over half. And and those Fortune 500 companies, they have very sophisticated management. And I want to say something about Frank and Dan Carney, because Dan's wife Beverly passed away. A lot of people give a lot of credit to Frank and Dan Carney, but I'll tell you what, Beverly was, in my opinion, was a genius behind the show. She was the one. I mean, she was unbelievable. She was looking at all these little Pizza Huts around coffee, like Coffeeville, Kansas, and all these littles, and she would sit there and realize, okay, by the time you build a pizza, you got to build the land and the building and the deal. Everybody eats from 12 to 1. They all come in and look at the process. We seat them. Then we take their drink order. Then we get their drinks. Then we take the order. Then we go make it. Then we deliver it. And it takes about 45 minutes. And they wolf down the food the last 15 minutes. They leave. Then she'd take all the tickets divided by the number of people, and she kept coming back to this $2.99. And then one day she sat there and said, well, they're all going to spend $2.99, but if we change the process and come in and we just have a $2.99 all-you-can-eat buffet, they come in, they make their own drink, they go to the buffet, they get all their food, they sit on the table, they eat, and they're gone in 30 minutes.
They revolutionized, turn the tables.
So now we get to turn the tables twice, so she doubled the return asset. Think about it, you built a Pizza Hut store. It sells $1 at lunch because 20 tables come in and spend $1. But now that 20 tables come in and they flip in 30 minutes, and then another 20 tables are loaded and flip, now that dollar store is doing $2. Beverly Carney, Dan Carney's wife, actually pioneered that, and I think she's the reason that it exploded and was sold to PepsiCo, and they all lived happily ever after. But anyway, and then I want to say, I want to ask one more specific question. So if my homies go to your website, businesscoachdan.com. What are they going to find at businesscoachdan.com?
Yeah, you'll find really what I'm all about. My LinkedIn page will give you even more, but the businesscoachdan.com will give you an overview of what I do and how I do it. Most importantly, there's a section there that we have case studies. There's almost 30 case studies on there of the business, what the issue was, need or problem, what the solution was, and what the result was. And if you really want to see real world results, you can go to that. And if you go to the website, I hope you do, be sure to look up the case studies, because that'll give you an idea of what we do and how we do it and the results. We've been very blessed over time. We've been really blessed over time with the results that
I want to say something. He's too humble of a guy, but he's on LinkedIn. He has 29,000 followers, 29,611 followers. Let me tell you about something on LinkedIn. Maybe 1% go to that from, you have 50, 100, 500 to that 500 plus. Maybe that's like 1%. To have 29,611 followers, that's legendary stuff.
They cut you off at 30,000, so
yeah.
I keep it a little below 30,000. I just added a business page so we can overflow it.
Microsoft bought LinkedIn. They bought Skype, and every single time LinkedIn prompts me with some survey, that's the only thing I say. Why do you cut off at 30,000?
Yeah.
Nobody else does that.
Yeah.
And that's crazy, but seriously though, that's extremely impressive.
Well, and almost everybody on my list is I've been very specific on the people that I invited and accepted, and most of the people there are C-level business owners or CEOs, CFOs, chief marketing officers. They're business owners. I've tried to keep it within the people that I hope to influence and work with.
But it's a big decision to hire a business coach. I see on your website, book a free session at businesscoachdan.com. So this is uncensored. This is raw. I don't want to talk about anything anybody agrees on. In the uncensored deal, if someone's listening to you and they say, no, I'd kind of like the services, but they're afraid. Like, what does it cost? Is it $1 million, zillion? And furthermore, they always think, Well, you don't understand, because my business is totally different, and I got this totally unique problem. You know, you've never heard of my problem before. How do they?
First of all, I'll bet you $1,000 I have heard of their problem before. In this business, you hear of everything. I could write a whole book just on stories. Well, I put that in there because if they qualify, first of all, I never ask anybody to pay, because when in the beginning, because you know, when they're interviewing me, I'm also interviewing them. I want to work with somebody that's open and that is coachable, and that I know if working together, if they'll do what we decide is the best move, that they will be successful. So, but I like to give about an hour free coaching session. It's a sales-free zone. You know,
is it a phone call? Is it Skype? Is it in person?
It just depends if they're here or they're somebody else in the world. And if they're somewhere else in the world, we do an hour Skype or Zoom call, and we just talk about their issues and needs and challenges, sometimes problems. A lot of times, the thing that messes with people isn't necessarily a problem; it's a challenge or need that they never were taught. You know, so I'll do an hour. And just talk about their issues and maybe give them some insight and thought. And then if they would like to talk about working with me, then we'll talk about it. But, you know, it's not a setup or a pitch. So, again, I like the work. I want to work with business owners. I love to work with professionals. I even do from time to time, we'll do workshops like for dentists and professionals where we'll have a location and invite people in, or we'll do an online program.
There's a lot of Microsoft people here. In fact, my next door neighbor works for Microsoft. But come on, Microsoft, you bought Skype and you bought LinkedIn, and I'm on Apple, so I can FaceTime people. Now you're on Droid, you're on Samsung, so you can't FaceTime people.
No,
but LinkedIn.
But I can do Skype on there.
Yeah, but LinkedIn owns Skype, so I should be able to go to your Skype, your LinkedIn page, hit the phone icon, and then be able to have a FaceTime with you.
Should.
I mean, I'm a dentist and I know that. I tell my neighbor every time I see him at the driveway, I'm like, "Hello." I mean, they bought what did they pay? $11 billion for Skype. It's like, you own that asset. Why don't you make that seamless? Because I like to, when I'm talking to people, I really like to see them because so much of communication is body language.
Oh, yeah. There's a lot of it is body language. And that's why I love Zoom and Skype and things like this, because just by me watching you, I have a new client that's in Los Angeles right now. And I met with him the other day for the first time, and it was so valuable for me to be able to see him. And I could see when he's getting nervous. I could see when we'd hit a nerve on something that we needed to talk about. And sometimes people aren't even aware of things that they're doing that hurts their business. They're not even aware of it. And so that's very important for me to be able to see them, because I'll be able to pick up on that, because I've become kind of an expert on reading body language and such, and I can say, you know, let's talk more about that. And before it's over with, you know, I'll be able to see it, and I'll help them be able to see it, because what I do isn't all about telling. You know, I always say I define a good business coach as somebody that will coach, will teach, will train, and I'll be the first one to hug you, and I'll be the first one to kick your rear end when you need it. You know, but through that process, if you're willing to move through that process, we almost always achieve success based on how you define that.
In 2011, you wrote the book Bootstrap Business. Is that still a good read in 2018?
Yeah, yes, it is. If you can find it, it's not in publication anymore, as far as I know. I wrote that along with Jack Canfield, who wrote Chicken Soup for the Soul, and John Christensen, who wrote the book Fish, and Tom Hopkins, the great sales coach.
We've had Tom on the show.
Yeah, and I wrote that a collaborative book, and it's again it's a collaborative book about starting a business. And then I wrote Life Best Lived, and then the new book is going to be purely about business and really things I've learned from street fighting business. And it's catching a lot of interest. And then later this year, I hope to have Mastering the Grind out at the end of the year.
Well, you got a busy year if you're going to release Real World Business, Straight Talk on Surviving and Thriving in Business, and then the book Mastering the Grind. You know what the first thing I thought of when I read the title of that book, Mastering the Grind? One of my favorite books of all time was the autobiography of Ray Kroc, the founder of McDonald's, grinding it out to making McDonald's. And it was my favorite movie of 2017, The Founder.
Yeah.
Who was that?
Michael Keaton, wasn't it?
Michael Keaton. I mean, the thing that's neat about talking to dentists is every famous person on earth goes to the dentist. So talk about 6 degrees separation. If you're a dentist, you got 2 degrees separation. I mean,
from almost anyone.
Well, you couldn't be the CEO, or you couldn't be anybody in who's made it to that league and be missing your front tooth and have dirty teeth.
That's right.
But if you're what was the movie star's name? Michael Keaton.
Michael Keaton, I believe.
If you're Michael Keaton's dentist, listen to me. You tell him that was the greatest movie. I got to see him when I was 10. So my dad. I was born in 62. In 72, when I was 10, he bought a Sonic drive-in franchise in Wichita. So he had 5 Sonics in Wichita. He had one in Kearney, Nebraska, Childress, Texas, Abilene, Kansas, Louisville, Kentucky. And so now I go to dental conventions, but when I was with Dad, we went to restaurant conventions. So we drove down 35 from Wichita through Oklahoma City to Dallas, and at a restaurant convention, Ray Kroc spoke, and I was I was about 10 years old, and I was sitting in the front row, right on the aisle next to my dad, and I was 10, and now I'm 55, so I don't remember. Can I give you my Ray Kroc impression?
Yeah.
All I remember from the whole deal, he says, "You know what?" So the whole deal, if you go back in the day, after World War II, we didn't have interstates. And when our 5-star General Eisenhower was in Europe, and he saw
Kansas.
That Abilene, Kansas. When he was in Germany, and he saw how they could make a tank and put it on an Autobahn and drive it 90 miles an hour to the shipyard. And then he'd see the tank made in Ohio, and it takes 6 weeks going down dirt roads to make it to the base in San Diego. He came back and he wanted to build his interstate. And a lot of people say that's American folklore. That's not true, but that the interstate had nothing to do with the military, whatever. It was put out by a 5-star general who just got done watching the Autobahns. But anyway, that's when franchises took off, because before the freeways, all Americans were born, raised, reared, and died, and never went 100 miles away from home. And then when they had those interstates, people walk out there and go, middle of Kansas, like, really? I could drive that interstate all the way to California and go to Disneyland? And that's when people started going down the deal. And Ray Kroc knew that. And he knew that when you got to the next town, you didn't know what any of these things was. So franchises would take off best because it would be familiar. You'd get to the next town and say, oh, that's a McDonald's. But Ray'd sit there, and I remember him saying, he goes, you know who decides if you're going to eat? It's Mama. It's not Daddy. It's Mama. And when they get to that next town, they're going to have to go to the bathroom. Dad, he'll pee anywhere. He'll pee on a tree. He'll pee on his truck. But Mama, she's got to sit down. And she knows that filling station bathroom is going to look like a camel just used it. And she knows if she goes to 7-Eleven, they're going to lie through their teeth and say they don't have a bathroom.
Yeah.
Really? You're working a 12-hour shift without a bathroom? They're liars. So at McDonald's, what we're going to do is we're going to clean the woman's bathroom every hour on the hour. And every woman in America driving down that freeway is going to know the cleanest bathroom in town is at the McDonald's.
And they'll buy something when they come.
And when she's in there sitting down, Daddy Bear and Baby Bear are going to be buying salty French fries and that deliciously cold Coca-Cola. I mean, I can remember that verbatim. And I remember thinking, that just makes sense. And you know what I take away from hearing Ray Kroc, but meeting Dan Carney. Dan Carney was such a jewel. He was so available to all these dumb kids in high school. You had a business idea, you could drive over to Pizza Hut, and Dan would listen to you at 14 years old. And,
we used to have him come and speak at our radio station sales meetings.
Oh, what a saint, man. And gave all his money to charities, on every board of every charity thing. But what I remembered about those two guys the most is all their genius insights were about the simple ways humans work and think. It wasn't about algebra, calculus. There's no fancy theories. It was, this is how people do it. This is what people do. This is how they work. This is how they think.
Sure.
And if you if you focus more on psychology and anthropology and sociology, just focus on your own damn family reunion. Would your Aunt Imelda agree with what you just said? Would your Uncle Charlie? And a lot of people say, you know, that person that wrote that Yelp review was crazy. You know, half your family's crazy. People are crazy. We're humans. Humans are crazy. And I just love those people. But that movie as a founder, I want to. I know you're a busy man, and I can't believe we already went over an hour. His website is
www.realworldbusinesscoach.com.
Oh, I have you at businesscoachdan.com.
That'll get there as well. Businesscoachdan.com.
Okay, businesscoachdan.com. And there's a button there, book a free session. So if they hit that book a free session, it just asks for your name, your email, your phone, your message, submit. And then you'll call them on the phone and talk about their special, unique situation that no one's ever heard of before. And then you can tell them how you've dealt with that exact situation 100 times before.
Yes.
Thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you.
And it's been a real honor, and thank you very much. I hope you have a great day.
Thank you very much.